Adam lived in a small village. It was surrounded by thick green forests. The trees grew tall, their leaves rustling in the wind. Adam's house was near the edge of the forest. It was a tiny wooden hut. The roof leaked when it rained. The walls creaked in the wind. But Adam didn't mind. He had little, but it was enough. He was a woodcutter. Every day he went into the forest. He chopped down trees. He worked from dawn until dusk. His tools were simple: an old axe, a saw with a chipped blade. His muscles ached from work, but he kept going. He had to. This was how he made his living. Every morning, Adam woke up early. He ate a simple breakfast: bread and water. He put on his boots and grabbed his tools. Then, he set off to the forest. The trees stood tall and silent. He swung his axe. The sound echoed through the forest. He chopped, one tree at a time. It wasn't easy work. Adam's hands were rough. His fingers were calloused from years of chopping. He would carry the logs back to the village. The villagers would buy the wood. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy food. His life was simple. He worked, ate, and slept. There was little joy, but he was content. But there were days when it was harder. Some days, the rain fell. It soaked through his clothes. Other days, the cold was unbearable. His bones ached with every swing of the axe. But Adam didn't stop. He couldn't. He had no choice. One morning, as Adam prepared for another day of work, he saw something strange. A figure stood in the distance. It was an old man. He had a long white beard. His robes were worn and tattered. He looked frail, but his eyes shone with wisdom. "Good morning, young man," the old man called out. "I have been watching you for some time. You work hard, but I can see you struggling." Adam was surprised. He had never seen this man before. "Who are you?" Adam asked. The old man smiled kindly. "I am someone who has seen much of the world. I have traveled far, and I have learned that there is more to life than just survival. You work hard, but there is a better way." Adam was curious. "What do you mean?" The old man's smile grew wider. "Life is not just about surviving, young man. It's about finding meaning in what you do. Every day is an opportunity to grow, to learn, to find peace." Adam thought about these words. "But I am just a poor woodcutter. I have no education, no wealth. How can I find meaning?" The old man nodded. "It's not about what you have. It's about how you live. Open your eyes, Adam. The forest, the trees, the wind. They are all part of something bigger. If you learn to see this, you will find joy, even in hard work." The old man turned and began to walk away. He disappeared into the trees. Adam stood there, staring after him. The words the old man had spoken echoed in his mind. The next morning, Adam woke up early, just as he always did. But today, something was different. He felt a change inside. He sat for a moment, thinking. He thought about the old man's words. "Find meaning in what you do," he repeated to himself. He stood up. He grabbed his axe. But today, he didn't just go to the forest. He went with a purpose. He wasn't just chopping trees. He was part of something bigger. Each swing of the axe was no longer just hard work. It was an opportunity to grow, to connect with the world around him. As Adam worked, he felt different. His swings were more deliberate. His movements were more focused. He paid attention to the sound of the axe hitting the wood, the scent of the trees, the rustling of the leaves. Everything felt alive. Days passed, and Adam's work began to change. He worked harder, but it didn't feel like a burden. His hands were still rough, but now they felt strong. Every day, he looked forward to going to the forest. The trees weren't just trees anymore. They were part of the world he was learning to understand. Adam started to save money. He was able to buy better tools. His small house became a little more comfortable. The roof didn't leak as much. The walls didn't creak in the wind. It wasn't much, but it was a step forward. The villagers began to notice the change in Adam. He was more peaceful, more content. He was no longer just surviving. He was living. People came to him for advice. They saw his wisdom, his quiet strength. But Adam knew he wasn't finished. There was still more to learn, more to discover. One day, as he walked through the forest, he came across an area he had never explored before. It was a small clearing, surrounded by ancient trees. The ground was soft with moss, and the air was thick with the scent of pine. In the center of the clearing stood an enormous tree. It was unlike any Adam had ever seen. Its trunk was wide and gnarled, its branches stretching high into the sky. The tree looked ancient, its bark cracked and worn with age. It stood alone in the clearing, as if it had been there for centuries. Adam approached the tree, his heart racing with curiosity. He felt a strange pull, a sense of awe that he couldn't explain. He placed his hand on the trunk. It was rough and cool to the touch. As his fingers brushed against the bark, he heard a soft voice in his mind. "Why have you come, young one?" the voice asked. Startled, Adam pulled his hand away. He looked around, but there was no one there. The voice had come from the tree itself. I don't know," Adam replied, his voice shaking. "I've come because something inside me tells me I must." The tree's branches creaked, as if it was considering his answer. After a long pause, the voice spoke again. "You seek wisdom, but wisdom cannot be found in books or words alone. It is found in experience, in the way you live your life." Adam listened intently. The tree's words felt as if they were reaching into his very soul. "You have learned much, young one," the tree continued. "But there is more for you to discover. Your journey has only just begun. You must continue to grow, just as I have." Adam stood in silence, taking in the tree's words. He had always believed that there was more to learn, more to understand, but now he knew that the path to wisdom was not a destination. It was a journey. It was about living, experiencing, and embracing every moment of life with intention. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the clearing, Adam felt a deep sense of peace wash over him. He knew that he had found something special in this quiet corner of the forest. The tree had shown him that there was always more to discover, more to learn. But most importantly, it had reminded him that the journey was just as important as the destination. That evening, Adam returned to his village, his heart full of new understanding. He was no longer just a woodcutter. He was a seeker of wisdom, a man on a journey of growth. He knew that he had a lot left to learn, but he was no longer afraid. He had found purpose in his work, purpose in his life, and that was enough. The next day, Adam set out into the forest once again. But this time, he didn't just cut trees. He took the time to listen to the wind in the trees, to watch the birds in the sky. He marveled at the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. Adam had found beauty in the simplest things. Years passed, and Adam continued his work, but he never lost sight of the lessons he had learned. The village grew, the people flourished, and Adam became known as a wise and peaceful man. His simple life had become a testament to the power of purpose, of finding meaning in every moment. And as the years turned into decades, Adam grew old. His hair turned white, his back became bent with age, and his hands grew frail. But his heart remained strong. He had lived a life of meaning, a life of purpose, and that was all he had ever needed. One final winter, as the snow fell gently around his village, Adam sat by the fire. His work was done. He had done everything he had set out to do. And now, as he looked back on his life, he smiled. He had found peace. He had found joy. He had found purpose. And that was enough. As he closed his eyes for the last time, Adam knew that his journey had come to an end. But the lessons he had learned, the wisdom he had gained, would live on. In the village, in the forest, and in the hearts of those who had known him. And so the woodcutter's journey ended, but his legacy lived on, carried by the wind, the trees, and the people who had learned from him.